Welcome, gentlemen, to this edition of PDX Black Beat with your host, John Washington from Flosset Media. Today on the podcast, we have two distinguished guests, people that I happen to admire and appreciate in the community that deals with Black people in our communities and our state. And today I have with me Mims Rouse, the executive director of the Coalition of Black Men, and I have Edie Mondaine, who is also the chair of the NAACP, with me today. Today, gentlemen, I pulled you guys together today, man, because over the last week, I knew something was forming, but I wasn't quite sure how to articulate it and begin to make some sense out of it. But these numbers that have been coming back for our demographic of Black people in relationship to Corona-19, the virus 19, man, it was staggering. And so what I wanted to do was to pull you guys together and just have a brief discussion as to how you guys see what's going on, what's your thoughts about how we as a community should begin to coordinate and begin to address some of these issues that are related to African Americans in this virus. And there is a couple of different segments and sections of that. That's not only from the health wise and the overall condition of Blacks in Oregon and in the United States, but also how the financial, what's your perception of how the financial impacts in terms of these rollouts and these types of things? How would we, because we tend to want to believe that the worst of us or the less of us are generally the ones that receive the least. And so in terms of support and help and that kind of stuff. So what I'd like to do is to start out with Edie, just to get a little check-in with you about some of your thoughts about, what I began this conversation with. Where are you as the NAACP looks at it and on the national, especially on the national, and then you can bring it back into the local. But where do you see things at right now, Edie? What's your sense of your experience going on right now in relationship to this conversation around Corona-19?
Well, I see history repeating itself, and once again, I see that the African American community is the first harmed and the last informed. Statistics don't lie. We're always at the bottom of the pile, and while being at the bottom of the pile, we are the most resilient people on earth. History has taught us that we're resilient, and we're resilient because of these types of things. We always seem to muster up sunshine in the midst of thunderstorms. It is imperative that we collect ourselves as a community and stand as a united force because we are the bottom. We're at the bottom of the pile, and I'm an avid believer in this. When you stir from the bottom, everybody rises. Um, our shoulders are strong, and we need, especially those that are in leadership in our community, to rally the troops and to get us to stand together on one page and talk about what it is that we need in this country, because it's not just the virus that we have to worry about; it's the prize. It's what's going to happen after this is gone. This is going to last. Trouble don't last always, but the after effects are going to be with us for an indefinite amount of time.
Thank you very much, man. And you nailed some of that stuff. But before we get into that, Mims, would you like to share a little bit of your thoughts and how you've been experiencing from your leadership and the organization that you represent, or just even your personal thoughts? How are you receiving some of this information?
Yeah, so I rubber stamp everything that Pastor Mondaine just said. We are resilient. This isn't the first time that we've been through this sort of situation. Everything that happens to the United States is amplified in our communities. But due to our resilience, we keep pressing on. All we know how to do is make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're going to make it through this. I'd like to see us use a lot more of the technology that is available to us. There seems to be somewhat of an anti-intellectualism within our community. And I'd like for us to push back on that. I'd like for us to demand certain things as rights. One of them is access to a computer and access to internet. Because it's been said that you can't step into a river twice, into the same river twice, because the river is flowing. And yesterday is gone. We're living a whole new reality today. And I think that we should let tomorrow go, and that we should consider what technologies we need in order to progress.
Do you think, historically, most of these types of situations, gentlemen, it's like the train leaves the station without us on it, right? And so how do we begin to look at some of the impacts and the falls, especially things that are coming to light right now, and the fact that the state of our health for the African-American community? How do we begin to somehow or another, in your thoughts, how do we begin to look at that on a local level here now? And what should we begin to take a look at? What are your thoughts about our next steps in terms of that we're enlightened and informed about our condition in America? I happen to believe that most times, we take what the status quo or the majority says to us with a grain of salt or a grain of sand, I should say. And we don't really, we hear it at the side of our head mostly. They said to us the boogeyman was coming, and most of us go, well, that boogeyman been coming for a lot of years for us. So, but then was that a reason for me to get in off the street? Or is that a reason? Do you think that this virus is a serious matter that we as a people should first and foremost recognize that it is a serious matter?
Dr. Ashwin Bashan, he's a public health expert and assistant professor at Columbia University in New York City. And I echoed his sentiments. This virus is an equal opportunity crisis, but the impact and the burden of it is not just going to be shared equally. Like most things in our society, it's going to be regressive. So it is imperative that we begin to create clarion callers on all fronts to talk about the systemic racism that has stood with us and steadily stands with us in terms of frontline initiatives and making sure that all of us that have will are at the table. We've got to sit at the table and not just be there, but we've got to eat. We've got to partake in the meal.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do that until you said, hey, you missed me. So it's just not playing a black card. And a lot of us like, oh, you're going to play that black card. Numbers don't lie.
Yes.
When we look at the numbers, we understand that it is what it is. So therefore, just like, I'm very, very happy that the first funding available for small businesses was in the Jade District here in Portland, Oregon. That was wonderful. I'm glad that the Asians, the richest minority that we have, got some help. However, statistically and strategically, it was an error. We always should start with our most vulnerable and those of us that have the greatest need. Equity is not equity if it's given in the wrong places. And I'm telling you something, unless we stand there and make the noise and use our broad shoulders and strong arms, it's not going to happen. So my answer to you is to use our broad shoulders, strong arms, and big voices. We're going to have to kick the door down and say, we're here.
Yes.
All right?
I echoed that sentiment, but I also echoed this one part of this expression that goes, you don't have to be born black in Oregon for your blackness to matter here. So make the contribution. I see that caption, and I think that sometimes, man, we have this double message that we have to our community is that somehow or another, is that since you ain't from here, you can't help to do something. You can't move something. Okay, so I like to make sure that we get beyond that, because we ain't enough numbers most of the time in the state of Oregon for us to begin to even alienate one Black person that come here. But I think it's really important that we tend to understand that the most important part, that how we were affected in the past was that we were not allowed the right to gather, and to make and stake a space collectively. And so we still have that old experience that keeps us like crabs in a bucket, And I think what becomes a real imperative in these times is that we forget about all of that, and we begin to acquiesce and coddle one another and support one another to get beyond. But do you think we can get past that fragmentation to be able to get to the next place in response to this? I mean, because after all, it's going to take a collective effort. So do you believe that there are resources and opportunities in place for us to begin to build some type of collaborative, supportive reality to insulate the Black community here in Oregon?
So I think it's interesting that, the pastor mentioned the race card. What many people won't say is that we were given the race card. And so we can play it as we wish, since we've been granted that race card. For the Black community, we've got to, our leaders within the Black community have got to come together and to present a strategy to us that we can adhere to. And unfortunately, we as a community tend to look to other people rather than within our group for help. And I don't know when that started, but it's never worked to our benefit.
Oh, I'm so in support of that. And I was just thinking that, Mims, not to interrupt you on that, but this whole notion that we always got to get somebody else to help us get to where we're trying to go. Meaning that most of the time, like this last round, let's just allude to this last round of funding to small businesses, right? Now, did anybody know how that selection process went, why they chose the businesses that they chose? And was there any kind of system that was a collective reality amongst us that said we would encourage these businesses to be supported and to make sure that these businesses stay in our community? Because is that most of us live from one paycheck to the next paycheck in these small businesses. So do you believe that process was a process that was structured in a way that was designed to help African-American businesses in our community? Or do you think it was just a process just to help business?
So I think that, just briefly, I think that there's no solidarity within the Black community to stand in those spaces to say, here's what the Black community needs. We need Black town hall meetings, and they don't have to be in person. They can be live via the internet. But we don't have anyone stepping forward to say, hey, everybody gather around. I need your voice so that I can take that back to these power centers, these centers of power. And so, that's my position, is that we need a leader. And it's nice if we have multiple ones, but we do need our voice centralized and presented. And too often, our leaders here in Portland, specifically, they tend to have one foot in the Black community and one foot in other communities, and not really doing us much service. And so I would really appreciate someone who speaks solidly from our corner. And now I'll be quiet.
Well, John, and Mims he hit it spot on. Nepotism here, especially, I don't know why, is extremely rampant. And like you said, you have to be from here. I've been here 35 years. My boys were born here. My grandchildren were born here, all of them. And
Yeah.
I decided to come out of out of my little corner in 2016. And I tell you what, as president of the NAACP, I call hell trying to make changes. But you got to have somebody who speaks um, without having the money belt tied around their waist, or there's something in it for them. I'm not running for any office, and neither am I looking for somebody to hand me something financially. I'm set. I've been in business here for over 25 years. So we've got to start talking about what's good for our community and not what's just good for our pocket. And unfortunately, we have seen a whole lot of folks that are in this race because of what it can benefit them. We have got to forget about the reward individually and start talking collectively about how this benefits our communities, because we got a lot of folks that need us badly and very desperately, and we need to be here for them. So I'm again echoing what Mims just said. We've got to create a town hall that says, what do we need and how are we going to get it? A lot of people don't understand what the NAACP does. We're not a service provider, number one. We will have some services as we go into this next quarter and as we go into the next year, 2021. We will provide wraparound services for some initiatives that are already there. However, we must understand that the NAACP is there to support other organizations that support Black idea and Black enterprise. So my job is to make sure that we're at the table and that you get a plate and that you're served. That is what we do. So I'm going to need those people like this extraordinary mind in my brother Mims here with the Black Men's Coalition to come up front and be the experts to say, this is what we need, this is what we've got to have, and this is what we want right now. And we can do that, but we can't do it individually. We got to do it collectively.
What do you think that we're here in Oregon? Do you feel that the information about our condition here is being truly being revealed, or is it on the whip coming, or do you think that we have to some degree began to mitigate the virus, uh, the coronavirus 19 here in Oregon? Do you feel we're doing a good enough job for Black people to alert them, to aware them, and to address some of their needs here in this state?
Well, I don't think that we're doing a good job globally. And one of the things that have been a curse to the African American community is access to anything, access to information, access to funds, access to just basic needs. We need to talk about what our survival looks like and our sustainability in cases like this. This virus has done us a great justice. It has created a place across the world that we have to hit the reset button and say, where are we lacking? Now, listen, God has given us a gift. So if we look at this gift and say we don't want it, then that's on us. But now it is time to talk about how does our community stay resilient with the powers that our ancestors have given us and taught us, and how do we sustain ourselves, and what is it that we need to do to incubate ourselves and make sure that we're getting everything that we need. That's up to us. And I'm going to challenge all of our men, especially, to push us towards that mark, because that's why we were born men. And that's why we have the mantle of taking care of our community. Now, there's a whole bunch of letters I'm going to get, and people going to slap me in my face. Well, you don't need to take care of us. Yes, we do. We're the muscle in our community, and we are the folks that couldn't do it, and can't nobody do it but us. So we're going to have to get up off our tails, and begin to stand on our feet and push with everything that we've got to make sure that we get what we need.
Now, Edie, you spent some time talking to the mayor. Do you believe the mayor hears the needs of the African American community here in Oregon?
Well, he's gonna hear it every time he see me, and I don't necessarily need anything from him. I was good before I met him, and I would be good after he leaves, because I'll be here doing this term and the next one maybe, and the one after that. I don't know, but I do know this: I need the collective voices of our people to go in the room with me to tell me what it is that I need to be telling him. I need you all to tell me what I need to be telling the governor. It's not about what I think. It's about what my community thinks. And it's about the power that stands behind us. And one of the things that we cannot do, I cannot go into any room and begin to downplay or belittle any brother that's in leadership here in our sister that's in leadership here in our community. Why? Because if I do that, I denigrate the entire power of who is at the bargaining table right then, and take away from the fact that we are serious and we're real. We got to learn once again to stand together. So when I stand there with the mayor, I can't stand by myself. I need Mims. I need and you and every.
You were in the midst of saying this one part, which before you got out of there, you were
Because
saying that.
I really would like to respond to what he said, because
Okay.
I think there's synergy.
Go for it, man.
Oh, okay. So, can you hear me, Pastor?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. So, what the Coalition of Black Men need, and I think what many other Black organizations need, and I've talked to several other Black centers of power, is that we need first to take inventory of our organizations.
Right.
And, you know, because not everybody is going to join your organization, not everybody's going to join my organization, but typically everybody's going to join a organization. They're going to, and if not officially, they're going to listen to any information that comes out of that organization. And so what I would love, and I've asked one other organization to do it, and they pushed back. They simply didn't want to share their information. They said that the information they had curated, and it had a value to it, and they weren't going to just give it away. And so that's a problem, especially in times like this. I mean, that philosophy really starts to do us harm in times like this. But I think that the NAACP and the I forget the other really large organization here, Black organization,
Urban League.
Urban League. Yeah, I think that they can play a really significant role right now in bringing us all together, because all the Coalition of Black Men all we need is an invitation. That's all we need. Tell us when, where, and we're going to tell our constituents when and where. And I will say that as a group, we need to do some work around trusting each other, and that's just going to take time. But I think that, and anyone who knows me knows that I'm not above shaming people. And I think that it's a tool that is not used very often, but is very effective. And so if we take inventory of these institutions, and shame them when they don't show up.
Yes, sir.
You know, here's, we send an invitation out to such and such and such and such, and their leader is this person, and we didn't get a response. If you know how to get in touch with these folks, please let them know that we're trying to get a hold of them.
I agree.
And I think that we need to stop playing the Portland nice, and start getting the Black real. Like, we know how to get real,
Yes,
and
sir.
use that to our benefit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Mims, I think you're onto something. I think historically, though, the question is, how do we get past the apathy? But then what centralizes us? What do we galvanize ourselves around? And do we begin to take out any kind of conversations about the name on the brand, but more so collectively the people that the brand represents and address? And then somehow or another we come into the room with that intention. and to deal with our community and to be a part of our community, and it be as a significant point and to about the long-term welfare of our community. How do we begin to galvanize this process and bring these people into the room? And so, but tell me this, gentlemen, in your minds, do you believe right now that the end result of this is going to arrive us to a place that once it's all settled and done and the train leaves the track, do you believe we have positioned ourselves well enough to be able to recover in from this scenario? Other than our ability to sustain in spirit, what about our political and economic positions and health positions in this? Do you believe we're doing enough at this point in time to begin to address the needs of our community in these areas?
Well, I think that we galvanizing our community, iron sharpens iron. And once again, I'm echoing Mim's thoughts. We have got to come together, and we've got to begin to shame those people that don't come to the table. And we can't be nice anymore. You know, for a long time, I was the nice guy. I didn't respond to all the nastiness and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's another day. It's time to stand up and say, wait a minute, this ain't about me. Look, I'm past 60 years old. I got another 30 years to be here, perhaps, maybe 40. I don't know. However, we need to understand. Joseph Lowery told me something a couple of years ago. He said, you've got to be able to organize in the grassroots. And when other folks won't come to play, you create people to play with, and it'll shame them for not being there. They'll want to be a part of what we do.
Absolutely.
So what Mims and I are going to have to do is come together and say, to hell with these folks, and and say we're going to organize something so spectacular, so mouth-watering, and so juicy, and the fruit from that will be so plentiful that everybody will want to come to eat. We all remember the story about Henny Penny, the hen that wanted to bake the bread, and then when she wanted somebody to help her gather the wheat and crush the wheat and do all the work, they didn't want to do it. But when the bread got baked and they smelled that joker, and she put butter on it, she said, "Who gonna help me eat it?" So everybody came to the table. She said, "I ain't giving y'all none of it." So what we're gonna have to do is forget about these folks that won't come to the table. We invite them, of course, but we ain't gonna beg them. But we're gonna beat the bushes where the best is. The best is always at the bottom. If you know anything about making a 7-Up cake, if you don't stir that joker the right way, if you don't take your time in mixing it, well, then you don't get that crust at the top that makes that 7-Up cake wonderful. Guess what? We're gonna have to stir from the bottom, and that grassroots is where we're gonna always find our power. Remember this, my brothers. Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Ralph Abernathy, Dr. Martin Luther King, they were all very unpopular men in their own communities.
Absolutely.
And it was wheat folks that stood them up. The NAACP was founded by white folks. Four white folks and 3 black people that hewed into an idea. Darling, guess what? Times ain't never changed. We just stopped growing with the times. It is time for us to galvanize ourselves, iron sharpening iron, begin to stir up the roots and organize.
Absolutely.
Do you believe? Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I echo that 100%, you know, and figuratively, if not actually, we need to have a press conference where we recognize the leaders of organizations who showed up, and then call out the people who didn't show up, and let that be around, you know, and tell, you know, it'll hurt at first, but you know, let that, because we need a true inventory.
Yes, sir.
You know, we started doing a little bit of that work. It's online. We try to recognize who's doing work in our communities, but it's not complete. And I'd love to work with anybody who wants to just do that work. take inventory. When I mean inventory, I mean inventory. I'm talking about not only the Black run organizations, secular organizations, but the churches. Who are the Black pastors? That there should be a place somewhere for that, for that information. And who's running the Black mentoring programs? Who's running the Black businesses? Everything. And it's we can be pro-Black without being anti other people. And I'm tell you something else too. I think part of what's happening to us is orchestrated. I don't believe if we are able to locate the first person to say that Black people don't get this virus, I'm not a betting man. I'm almost certain that person wasn't one of us. And it works to our detriment,
Oh,
because
yes, sir.
I've heard come out of another Black mouth. And actually, so we do mentoring. We were in one of the schools when this thing was just starting to take off. And one of the kids who came to our space said, I heard that Black people don't get this. And I was like, wow, it's already started.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I called down south home and I'm asking about, okay, so how are you guys preparing for this? Because, we live in a very white dominated area here. And I'm like, these people are taking it very seriously here. We got all types of things being rolled out here, at the government level.
Right.
And, they're getting their hair done. They're still hanging out under the tree. No one's really taking it seriously.
Down in the park, all that,
Yeah. And so
Dawson Park, same old thing.
Right. And so part of me says, well, I know what it is. It's a generational, historical, being underserved historically, systematically, all that stuff. Right. And we've got to, with a clear voice, singular voice, educate our people that we're having, someone's pulling the okie doke. We can get this. No, it shouldn't make us, it shouldn't paralyze us with fear. But at the same time, let's be let's use the mind that God gave us. Right. Let's be smart about this.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I hear Mims saying that we have to be the voice of reason.
Yes.
And they say Black don't crack. I just recently wrote an article that appeared in the Scanner, the Observer, the Times, the Gazette, that talked about the resiliency of Black people. Why are we resilient? Because we've been through this. But not only that, we've understood what to do and done it. And we're going to have to get in our places to where we know that we can push and actually push. So I'm going to challenge us to a town hall meeting. I'm going to set it up. And the NAACP will take the lead, and we will invite all the people that will and shall to come and sit at the table and make sure that we understand what our collective need is and begin to move forward from there.
Well, Edie, that's a bold claim, and that's a bold step, because that would have been my next question as to how do we begin and where do we begin? And gentlemen, I do really thank you both for showing up today and sharing a little bit of your insights. But before we end the podcast, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I am one of those intellectuals that like to delve deeper into things a little bit here and there. Along the lines of this virus 19, there are parallel conversations, about the government, about this and that. Which one of those parallel conversations seem to ring out loudest in your ear? But Mims, not being exempting the one you just talked about how the systemic reality of how we're placed today, where we're placed today, how we're going to be affected over the long haul with this is just the way it's going to play out. But when we think about it, if we're at the bottom of the rung and this thing hits and our issues around our health and our issue about our economic position in our society, all those things, they're mitigating. They're going to all play itself out the way it's set up. When the virus hit, we were at the bottom. We had problems with our health. We have stressors that no other population has that contributes to a lot of that mitigating stuff, lack of education, lack of exposure to the internet, all of these types of things that are readily available. How do we just begin to take the low-hanging fruit and begin to mitigate that? But we can come back to that in a different podcast. But the one thing I was going to just, which one of those parallel conversations, not to talk too much about conspiracy, but which one of the parallel conversations to the virus is ringing out in your head? Such as the issue about Trump, it being a biological warfare weapon and all these types of things. Which one for you seems to be ringing out in the head as a parallel conversation?
Well, I don't know who said it, but somebody said when white folks get a cold, we get pneumonia.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have to understand that that's really real, and that's no conspiracy. That's just the truth. So understanding, that whatever affects the rest of the world affects us 5 times worse. That's where we got to be. And understanding this, if there's no toilet tissue on the shelves for the general population, we ain't gonna get none for 2 years. So again, galvanizing our community, iron sharpening iron, and getting ready to do the fight that we got to go through. And I think that in calling this town hall meeting and beginning to lift the voices that are there, that's going to give us the wind to go where we need to go. We've been there before. We've done that before. We'll be there again, and we'll be represented once again as the resilient Black people that we are. And we're going to prove to the world that Black don't crack.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, what we can't do is we can't allow the politics of things to hinder us. Sometimes we look at the politics and consider them insurmountable. And the politics there, they are it's an illusion, right? And so what we need to do is we need to speak clearly about what we need and let them worry about the politics of it. And keep saying what we need until they work out the politics of it. Because one of the things that we want, that everyone knows, is that money doesn't really exist. The only thing that exists is what you could feel, taste, touch, hear. It was W. Bush who said it best, and it was during the Iraq War. He said that everyone's walking around talking about money, and he said that if we run out, we'll just print more, right? And so that apparently seems to be the strategy now, because we pulled $2 trillion out of nowhere.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Which could have cured our poverty problem in this country a long time ago.
A long time ago. And so don't get caught up in the financial aspects of it. Don't get caught up in the politics of it. Get caught up in what you need and shaming the politicians until we get what we need. They don't get our vote. They don't get to stand beside us and cry until we see a difference.
There's an interesting thought I had. I think there's something like 367 million people in America, and I don't know how many of those people are Black, but I know it's marginal. One billionaire, one of our billionaires, could give us each $1 million, and we'd be all right.
The beat don't stop. Hey, y'all, listen here. We do appreciate y'all, coming in. And just don't, for no reason, folks, and y'all listeners, believe that this ain't about you. We want Black Beat to be about you because the beat don't stop. You understand? We continue to move forward and we continue to forge ahead with enlightening information, with information that would assist you in the improvement of your life. So stay tuned, come this way, come check the information out on this site. Black Beat is here for you. We want to make sure that you're properly and adequately educated and informed and inspired to believe that you can move to the next level in life. So tune in with us, stay with us, and the beat still moves on. And it will continue to move on, y'all. PDX Black Beat. Hey, brothers, y'all, thank y'all very much for coming around here and hanging out.
The invite.
Yeah, say that. Hey, man, this was real neat, man. I appreciate it. But, Edie, I'm looking forward to that invitation to that town hall.
Yes, sir.
And it's going to be really nice to see if we can just keep adding people to this digital kind of format. Man, be able to see how many people we can put in this little screen here, as a downtown hall meeting. I mean, was you talking about having one physically after this was all over? Because I'd like to see one done digitally now.
No, we need one yesterday.
Yes, the day before yesterday, ma'am.
Yes, we do. We do.
Let's figure out what kind of platform we're going to use for that. And let's start sending out some of these invites, man. Because it's going to be real important for us to just stay diligent in the process. I'm sick and tired of watching the status quo always have to come out to be the deciders on who is going to be successful in our community versus who's not. They didn't make us. They're not going to break us, and we're going to be real important about how we're going to step ahead and achieve some of the things, or intentional is what I'm meaning, that we're going to be intentional about the things we're going to achieve from here. So, gentlemen, again, have a great afternoon. Stay safe. Don't do nothing I wouldn't do. At some point in time, I'm going fishing because I know ain't too many people going to be on the fishing holes. So
just practice social distancing.
Yes, sir. Because we at that age right now, we can't afford to get nothing but some money.
Be safe.
But I do appreciate y'all brothers coming in, man. And again, if we can be of any help to you, when we get this finalized, we'll get it out to you, get it out to your people, let them hear what you guys got to say, and we do appreciate you. You hear? And
thank you.
Soon come, gentlemen. I'll talk to you soon.
God bless you.
God bless you too, Edie.